In the previous video, we've created a container class, and in this video, we are going to create the abstract model class, which will later on be used as a superclass of any model under our model directory. So book will also extend this abstract model class. So instead of the model directory, let's create a new class and let's call it model. If we hit OK. And now this is going to be an abstract class. So let's proceed with the abstract. There we go. Class model. Namespace okay because it's app and then model directory. So it's app model. And we are going to start with the first protected property called table. Each model will represent a single table, like book. Model will be connected with the books table, author with authors, and so on. So this is the first property. Let's put the doc blocks for this as well. It's going to be a string. Then the next property will store partials of a single SQL statement. So let's call it statements. And we are going to make it private because we don't need access to this property from any child classes or anywhere else. So statements, and that's going to be an array. Again, doc blocks. This is obviously an array, and let's put a note here: partials of a single SQL statement. There we go. Okay, next one will be called statement values. So private as well, statement values. And what this one will store, it will basically store any values that we are going to bind to the statement, which we later on put together out of these partials. And again, let's put the doc blocks. It's an array, and let's put a note here: values for the SQL statement. Okay, I'm going to create a few new lines so we can see things a little bit clearer. Okay, after this, we are going to start with the SQL statement so that we've got one statement that's used across all of the methods that we're going to have here. And the statement is going to be really simple. It's going to be simply select all from a given table. So let's put public function SQL and return select star symbol for everything from and then this table. This is going to be a default SQL statement. If we will want to overwrite it later on, we will be able from within any child class. So we're using this as a public SQL method. Again, if we need to change anything at any given time for all of the models, then we can do it in one place rather than going through each method separately. Okay, so that's the basic SQL method, which will provide us with a basic SQL statement for whenever we're going to be selecting anything from the database. Let's again put the doc block here. It returns a string, and it is SQL statement, SQL select statement. The next method will be the method that allows every model that extends this abstract model class to add new record to the database. And the name of this method will be insert. We are going to start. Again, this needs to be a public function. Insert, because we need to access it from outside of this and also outside of any model that's going to extend it. So that's why we're using public visibility here. And then the argument will be of the array type. So we type here into array and then values. Now here we return, and here is where we're actually going to use our container. So container get, and we're looking for the DB index. And on that DB index, we are going to call insert method. And I'm going to explain everything in just a second. Then we are going to pass table as the first argument, which is basically referring to this table property. So if we are going to overwrite it from within any of the models, that name is going to be passed through as a first argument, and then values, which are the only argument for this method. Now container, let's open our not index.php, our bootstrap and autoload. And as you can see here, we bound the basically database instance using this database manager make to the DB index. Now we can retrieve this instance using this container get. So we just specifying what index we want, and this will return the database instance. If we go to database, go to the database PHP, we have this insert method, which is basically what we are calling on this database instance here. So insert takes table and values which will be bound to the placeholders inside of the SQL statement. Okay, so this is basically going to add the new record to the database. As you have probably noticed, let's quickly add the doc blocks as well here. Let's put a note, create new record. As you have probably noticed, I didn't start with the tests. The reason why I didn't start with the tests for this specific class is because it's an abstract class and we cannot really instantiate it in any way. So the tests we will run will be written for the models that actually extend this model class. So we're going to have tests for book, for authors, and so on. The next method we are going to work on is going to be the method which works pretty much the same way as insert. The only difference is that rather than just returning Boolean true or false, indicating whether the record has been added successfully, it will actually return the instance of this object. So the new method will be called create. So public function, again, because it needs to be accessed publicly, create, and it will take the same argument as our insert method, so array of values. And the first thing we are going to do is to check if an exclamation mark, we're going to check if it did not this insert passing values through, so it will execute this insert and return Boolean true or false. So if it didn't succeed, then we're going to throw the exception. So throw new, just a standard exception. And the exception will say record could not be added. And let's import this exception here as well. So it's going to be added right at the top. Okay, so we know that after this if statement, if we go further, then that means that it's been added successfully. So the next thing we're going to do is return, and then this, and the method which we create in just a second, which will be called find. And what we're going to do is to use the container, again, get our database instance, and on this database instance, I want to call method last insert ID. You may remember we created this method to retrieve the ID of the last added record. So we can basically get the ID of this record that we just added and find it within the database. So our find method now, obviously, because create is now completed, let's quickly add doc blocks as well. So what we're going to do here, it's going to be exactly the same as insert. So create new record and return a model instance. Okay, so the find methods. This method is also going to be public because we may want to use it on its own. So public function find, and we need to pass the ID of the record. But then the second argument will be the field name. By default, it's going to be ID. It's not field, it's field this way. Okay, so because obviously by default we're going to be looking for the record by its ID, but if you want to find the record by anything else, you can also use this second argument, obviously. Okay, so return container, we're getting again database instance, and this time we are going to fetch the object. So fetch object, and we are going to pass a few arguments here. First of all, we are going to pass the SQL statement. Then concatenate this statement, because our SQL statement is just simply select all from table. We need to add the where clause, so where, concatenating with this table, and then concatenate it with the field name, which is passed through as an argument. So basically whatever table we have associated with the given model which will extend this class, then concatenate it with the field name. So table name, field name. So where this field name field equals question mark, because we are going to use prepared statement, obviously using our database component. Not semicolon, comma. This is the first argument, so our SQL statement. Then we pass the value that we want to associate, basically bind to this SQL statement, which is going to be the first argument of this find method. In our case, it's going to be either ID, if the field is ID, or anything else. And for the third argument, we are going to use keyword static with the scope resolution operator, these 2 colons, and then class. What this does basically, this is a late static binding. Using the static keyword, it allows us to return the name of the class with this class after the 2 colons. It returns the name of the class from which this method is being called. So if we could instantiate this abstract class, although we know we can't because it's an abstract class, then this would return up model basically, because up model is the namespace and the name of the class. So up \model \model, that's what it would return. It's the reference to a given class. Then if we were to do it from within this book, which will extend, let's quickly extend it straight away because we will do it at some point anyway. So now from within this book, if we instantiated new book object and then called find method on this book object, this specific line here, the static colon class, would return up model and then \book. So reference to the model, to the class that's actually that calls this find method. So that's what it would do. In that case, obviously, this find method will return the instance of that given class on which we are actually using this find method. So if it's from within the book, it's going to return a book. If we're going to have author a class, then that would return author, and so on. So that's pretty much it for our find method. Let's just add doc blocks here as well. And what this one does, get class instance. There we go. And I think that's enough for this video. Let's continue in the following one.